Okay, so switching over to the Tableau Your Data book, we're looking at chapter 6, the developing an ad hoc analysis environment. So the first part of this book or chapter talks about data discovery as a creative process. So some of the KSAs or knowledge, skills, and abilities that they identify are to be curious enough to explore the data. So what they're talking about here is a framework where you have data and you're trying to play around with data visualizations in order to gain insights. And then the balancing side of that is to be skeptical enough about what you see in order to not trust the initial findings. What I will add to this is that there's basically two approaches to data when it comes to data visualization, vizzes, or any sort of statistics such as data mining. One is where you are testing a theory. So this is more of a scientific approach. People in like psychology, this is what we do. We create a hypothesis and test that hypothesis, right? Data mining, on the other hand, is all about, we have all this data and we don't know what's going on. And so we're going to play around with this until we see something that looks significant, okay? Data visualizations can be used for both purposes. You can take a finding that you have already found and present it in a way that is visually appealing, or, and many of you have discovered this in the homeworks so far, those of you who are actually narrating your findings and stuff, you're finding interesting things as you're doing different analyses, and you're realizing that different ways of graphing the same data can produce different insights. And so there are two different approaches to the data. The thing to be cautious about when you are doing this exploratory approach is to remember that just like with the data mining class, if you're using your entire data set for something, you don't have a way to test it. So that is one thing to be skeptical about things, is that just because you see it in the current data set does not mean that it will apply to anything else other than your current data set, because it's not theory driven or anything like that. There's no reason to believe no foundational reason to think that it will apply elsewhere or into a future time. So you always have to be careful about conclusions you draw from exploring your data like that. Yeah, so, and especially you need to be skeptical when thinking about causality of this caused this, especially if you're not running any statistical analyses with these and you're just looking at patterns and stuff in your data. Okay, so just to be aware of that. They also point out that you need to be really knowledgeable about the data and the business context. We've talked about being knowledgeable about the data for weeks now. Data cleaning is the first time that we look at data and go, oh, like these things are coded super weird, and we don't know why they decided to code things in this way. Why is an infant coded, or why is this thing coded an infant if it's 30 years old? Why, what does an open and closed location mean? All these kind of things where sometimes our data sets don't label the things appropriately, and so we don't actually know why. So being knowledgeable about the data is always really important. And then the business context itself, what business rules are going on around the data collection, about how the data is going to be used, all these different things that we've been talking about. When you don't have that information, you can fill in with assumptions that will make things wrong for the people who are viewing it. They're going to misinterpret because you don't understand their context. So that is always key. And again, super hard when you're just like grabbing data off of Kaggle and stuff. So don't worry about that in terms of the project as much as when you're doing things for reals. The third thing I have in here is the competence with statistics to understand. This class is not a statistics class. If you don't have a statistics background, it's really going to hamper your ability to be a good data viz person, because data viz is like all the other, stats, data mining, yada, yada, yada. A lot of the job is data cleaning, grouping variables together appropriately, identifying the outliers, seeing if things are miscoded. All of these activities fall under the stats headline. So if you're even running a simple regression line, those trend lines, there's assumptions that go with those kind of analyses too. So anything that has to do with stats, I would suggest getting that training in if you don't have it already. So a personal quality of being detail oriented is always good in tracking data sources, checking the quality, noting the processes that you're doing to do your data preparations, all that kind of stuff. That goes hand in hand with the transparency and also being able to reproduce your own results. Okay, keeping in mind for the project that you should be able to give me the raw data and tell me what you did, and I should be able to reproduce what you did and get the same results that you did. Okay, so make sure that you're tracking all the things you're doing, like what calculations are you making? What did you do to clean up your data? What kind of grouping activities did you do? For example, if you're, if you had a lot of categorical type variables that were messy, all that kind of stuff you should be tracking. And then lastly, an artistic flair for the cleanup and presentation of the final product, making things pretty. As we said last week, it's not about the truthfulness of the data at that point, it's about the delivery of it, of making sure that it's something that people will actually want to see. One of the chapters from last week, or the least before, was talking about how just being pretty or not being pretty is enough to make people go actually look and engage with your data viz, or just completely ignore it. Okay, so those are qualities and things to think about in your career. Okay, so the rest of the chapter went into the more technical bits for the forecasts. This is the predictive modeling. This allows us to do future predictions for time data. I'm actually going to refer you to the official 6-minute tutorial video on that, because it goes into a lot more caveats and stuff than I would be able to, and I'd just be like regurgitating what they're saying anyways. But doing a basic forecast is super easy, as you'll see. This is specifically for time data, does not apply to non-time data. Like if you're just doing like money or something like that. Predictive modeling, like just keep it to time data. And then in the notes section, I have not only the link to the tutorial video, but the actual Tableau explanation from their website. So you can use that in conjunction with the textbook to understand the forecasts. And then the next one is on parameters. Okay, so parameters. I also just linked you to the 5-minute video because they're professionals, they can do this better than me. And I also have the help file from Tableau linked there as well. They've got multiple videos on parameters because it is one of those things where there's like the beginner level and there's the advanced level. Like you can get wild with these. But the video points out that filters are used to trim down the data in the view. Parameters actually change the value. So if you have a calculation that has a constant value going on, then you can actually change that. So for example, if you have like if you're doing like sales orders type of a thing, and you have a constant sales rate or tax rate on there, like you have a 10% tax rate on all your stuff. And so you're calculating the total cost based on the sum of this and then, you know, the sales tax and then final. And then you want to see, oh, but what if, you know, what if the tax rate went up, then I can move it here. Or if you're like, what if minimum wage went up? You can experimentally change the data so you can make your own predictions basically based on different values. That's where parameters come in. Also allows you to do things like you can combine it with like histograms, allow the user to change the bin sizes, stuff like that. Super cool, a little complex. So if you're still getting a handle on your calculations, this is the next level of that stuff. So I don't expect you to, I'm not going to require that you do this in your project. I don't expect you, I'm not going to require you to do it in your homework because it is complicated. But if you are at that level, I highly encourage that you actually do one. Okay. So again, you have the books and you have the official videos for those instead of me trying to manage this.